there for the annuals, but we have to study because our exams are still to take place, and we will now start our new chapter, that is expert detectives. Okay, expert detectives. It is a very interesting story, and I have the full faith that you will enjoy it. Okay, this is a very interesting story. The chapter is very interesting. You just continue with me. I will read and explain you the story, and we will finish our chapter quickly. So let me just give you a brief description about our chapter. Let me introduce you with the theme of the chapter and the characters. Okay, so as you can see from the topic, from the name, expert detectives. Okay, so obviously it is a chapter about detectives. And who are detectives? Okay, in Hindi we say jasoos, someone who tries to find out the what? Mysteries. Okay, what? Mysteries. So the one who finds out about the mysteries, and they are what? Expert. Okay, what is expert? A specialist of some thing. Okay, so they are expert in their field, that is to find out the mysteries, to solve the mysteries. Like you must have seen the CID, that is very formal, that is of government, but here our detectives are private. Okay, and who will be the detectives? The two main characters of the story, Seven and Maya. Okay, Seven and Maya are there. Both of them are siblings. They are siblings, and they are very curious kids. Yes, all the children are very curious, but they are particularly very curious. Very curious. Okay, what does curious means? Someone who is very who has a very strong intent to find about things. They want to find the answers to questions. They want to find about the things, and they are very curious. They want to detect something. They want to find out the mystery about one stranger. Okay, one stranger is there in our chapter, and about whom the two detectives, the expert detectives, Maya and Seven, will search about. And one thing about Seven is, you must be feeling strange that what kind of a name is Seven. So Seven is a boy whose actual name is Nishat. Okay, Nishat, and Nishat is the seventh note in music. Okay, so the seventh note in music, that is why he is called Seven. And Maya is his sister. Maya is very curious and she is very doubtful about this strange fellow. Who is he and what he has done? So what crime must this stranger would have done? We will find out in the chapter that what big crime, what big thing, what he is culprit about, the stranger, what the two kids are finding out. So we will together see what the mystery is, and we together will solve the mystery. Okay, so be with me, and we will read and enjoy the lecture together. So without much ado, let's start our story, Expert Detectives.
We are going to study the sixth chapter from your honeycomb, that is the expert detectives. Okay, I have already introduced you with the chapter, the name of our main characters, that is Nishat, who is Seven, who is also known as Seven, and Maya. Okay, so now let's see what the story is about and how the story goes. So let's start reading the chapter, Expert Detectives. Okay, so here we are starting the chapter. First of all, we will see that what there is. Nishat, a boy of seven, also called Seven because his name means the seventh note on the musical scale. Okay, so Nishat is known as Seven because of his name. that is Nishad, and Nishad is the seventh note in the musical in music. Okay, the seventh musical note in musical scale, and his 10-year-old sister Maya are very curious about one Mr. Nath. Okay, one stranger. I've already told you that why Nishad is known as 7, and he's the younger one. He is 7 years of age, and Maya is of 10 years of age. And they are very curious, they are very inquisitive about a particular Mr. Nath. Okay, then one day the children's marble rolls into Mr. Nath's room. Okay, so one day what happened? Their marble uh, rolled into the room of Mr. Nath, and Nishad gets a chance to see him. Is he a crook on the run? He asked himself. Who? Nishad. Why is his face badly scarred? Scarred means having lot of scars on the face, marks that have been there because of some injury. Okay, so Nishad is very curious that why he has so many scars on his face, why his face is very scarred, and is he on run? On run means is he running away from the police, from the government? Nishad's mother, a doctor, knows Mr. Nath as a patient who is very polite. So the kid's mother, she is a doctor and she knows Mr. Nath as a patient and who is very polite. Okay, so she thinks of Mr. Nath to be a very humble, very polite person, and the kids are but curious because one day their marble rolled into the room, and Nishad luckily got to see Mr. Nath, and he looked very dangerous. See, if you will see any person whose appearance is very scary, you will have assumptions about him that he is not very nice. If someone will not look very nice, you have your assumptions that he may or may not be very nice, but that is not the case. Even a book, you must have heard the proverb, you can't judge a book by its cover. Okay, so same way here our Mr. Nath is there, whose look is not very good. He is not very good looking man, and his face has a lot of scars which usually criminals have. So the kids are very curious, but their mother, who has a clinic and she's a doctor, whose patient is this Mr. Nath, she says that Mr. Nath is a very polite man. So now let's see what the story is about and how the kids will unroll the mystery, unravel the mystery about Mr. Nath, that whether he is really a criminal or they are just having these assumptions. So let's start the chapter. Expert detectives. As we walked back, okay, this chapter is covered in two parts. In two videos I will cover this chapter. This is the part 1. As we walked back towards the clinic, 7 said, he doesn't look anything like a monster, Maya, but did you see how thin he is? Maybe he is very poor and can't afford to eat. So Nishad, who is the younger one, who is 7 years of age, to his 10-year-old sister, said that he doesn't look anything like a monster, Maya. They were walking back from the clinic, and in the clinic itself, Mr. Nath had the room, I think, and Mr. Nath, who was seen by Nishad, had some scars on the face, but Nishad is making a point that he doesn't look very scary. He is nothing like a monster, Maya. But did you see how thin he is? So he is feeling pity on Mr. Nath, who, the boy Nishad, that he is very thin, maybe he is very poor and can't afford to eat. So that is why he is very weak. He can't be poor if he is a crook on the run, I told him. He's probably got millions of rupees stashed away somewhere in that room. So the story is narrated by Maya. Okay, to us, Maya is telling the story. So Maya is saying to us that he can't be poor if he is a crook on run. Okay, if he is a criminal, he can't be poor. He must have looted a lot of money from common people. I told him. So she's saying to us that I told my brother that he can't be poor if he is a criminal on run. He's probably got millions of rupees. So million, you all are aware that 1 million means 10 lakhs. So millions means lakhs of rupees. Okay, stashed away somewhere in that room. So maybe in that room he has a lot of money. That's why he doesn't come out and we are not allowed to enter. Okay, so let's see what happens next. Do you really think he's a criminal, Maya? He doesn't look like one. Nishad looked doubtful. So Maya is telling that Nishad looked very doubtful. He said that he doesn't look like a criminal, Maya. Do you really think he is one? Of course he is 1/7, I said, and he certainly isn't starving. Okay, so Maya made her point that he is one. Of course he is a criminal and he is not starving, he is not on hunger, because Mr. Mehta told us that Ramesh brings his meals up from the restaurant downstairs. So Maya is saying that one Mr. Mehta is there who has told us that Ramesh brings him his meals, his food from the restaurant downstairs. Okay, so here the first page is over, and you have been introduced with the story that Mr. Nath, who looked not very monstrous to Nishad, but Maya has the view that he is a monster and he is a criminal on run, and he is not poor because he gets his food through Ramesh, who brings his meal through the restaurant, and it is told to the kids by one Mr. Mehta. Now let's see what is there in the story. Okay, so here we have the second page. But Maya, Mr. Mehta told us he doesn't work anywhere. Okay, so Nishad is telling, but Maya, Mr. Mehta told us he doesn't work anywhere. Okay, so Nishad is arguing with Maya that Mr. Mehta has told us that he doesn't work. So how can he possibly have money for food, to pay for food? Nishad said. So exactly, I exclaimed. So Maya said, exactly. He must have lots of money hidden somewhere. Maybe in that trunk in his room. Maybe he has one trunk in which a sanduk, we say in Hindi, a trunk he has in which he has kept all the stolen money. Maybe in that trunk in his room. It is probably full of silver and gold and jewels and what rubbish, Nishad interrupted. So Nishad cut his sister short that what rubbish you're saying? I know I'm right, stupid, I told him. So Maya said, I know I'm right, you stupid. By the way, 7, did you see his scars? So now Maya asked her brother Nishad that have you seen his scars? I couldn't. If it was too dark, but I bet he got them during a shootout with the police or something. Okay, so Maya said that the scars. Have you seen what scars he had on his face? I couldn't. It was too dark. But so Maya is saying I couldn't see them, but I bet that he must have got them during a shootout with police. Mummy told us quite clearly they were burn scars, Nishat said firmly. So Nishat made his point again. He is arguing for Mr. Nath. He is arguing with his sister. So he said, Mummy has told us, our mother has told us that they were burn scars. They are burn marks. So they are not from any police shootout. Okay, Nishat said firmly. Firmly means very strongly. Perhaps the police had to set his house on fire to force him out. So Maya again made her argument that probably, perhaps, perchance, the police had to set his house on fire. That is why mom is saying that it is burn marks, that the police had to burn his house to get him arrested. I suggested, Maya said. 7 looked unsure. Still, the brother was not completely agreeing to his sister that Mr. Nath was a thief. On the Monday following Mama's birthday, Seven went alone with her to the clinic at Girgaum. Okay, so the place where their clinic is Girgaum, and Mama's birthday was there. Their mother's birthday was there. So on Monday morning, Seven went alone with her to the clinic. So Seven, the boy Nishad, went alone to the clinic with mother. As I was spending the evening with a school friend. So Maya was spending her time alone at home, and Seven, Nishad, who is Nishad, has gone to her mother's clinic without Maya, and Maya was with her school friend. When they returned, Nishad told me means told Maya, because Maya is the narrator. So Maya is saying that when they returned from the clinic, Nishad told me he had been to see Mr. Nath, and I felt most annoyed that I hadn't been there. So Maya and Nishad both were very curious to find about Mr. Nath, and Nishad tells Maya that he has visited Mr. Nath. So Maya became very annoyed that why couldn't I be there. Seven had been upset about Mr. Nath's gaunt appearance. Gaunt means sickly, with a lot of illness. Okay, he was looking very ill. Seven had been quite upset about Mr. Nath's gaunt appearance, ill appearance, and was sure that he was starving. He told me that he had knocked loudly on Mr. Nath's door that evening and said, "Open the door quickly, Mr. Nath." So Seven told his sister that Mr. Nath was very sick, looking very sick, and I was very worried, and I'm sure that he is starving. He is not having food from many days. Okay. He told me that he had knocked loudly on Mr. Nath's door that evening and said, "Open the door quickly, Mr. Nath." So Seven had tried to call Mr. Nath out. The man had opened it and asked him, "Lost another marble?" So Mr. Nath opened the door and asked the boy that, "You have lost one more marble." Now see what happened. Then he had obviously recognized my brother. Okay, Maya is suggesting us that Mr. Nath probably had recognized Seven. "No," said Nishad. He had taken the man's hand in his own and thrust a bar of chocolate into it. So see how polite, how good boy Seven is. He thrust means to put by force. He forced a bar of chocolate, a chocolate bar, into Mr. Nath's hands. "Did you get a chance to peek into the trunk, Seven?" I asked. So Maya was still doubting on Mr. Nath, so she asked Seven that, "Have you got the chance to see inside the trunk?" Nishad looked disappointed. "He didn't even ask me in," he said. Then he smiled. "But I did find out something, Maya." So Nishad said that Mr. Nath didn't took me inside his room, but I have got something. I have found out something, Maya. He was very happy and he was smiling. "I went down to the restaurant where Mr. Ramesh works and talked to him." So Seven is saying that I went down to the restaurant where Ramesh works, and Ramesh brings food to Mr. Nath as told by Mr. Mehta to the kids. "Good for you, Mr. Detective," I said, patting him on the back. Patting means peet thapthapana. Okay. So he said, "Good for you, Mr. Detective." So Maya said to Nishad, "I hope you questioned him properly. I hope you have interrogated him properly." Seven looked pleased. "Ramesh told me that he takes 2 meals for Mr. Nath every morning and evening, and 2 cups of tea." Okay. So Mr. Ramesh told Seven that Mr. Nath asks for food and he takes 2 meals. Okay, food for 2 persons every morning and every evening, and 2 cups of teas, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Ramesh says he is not very particular about what he eats. He always eats the same food. Okay, so the same food he wants every time: 2 chapatis, some dal, and a vegetable. So he eats very simple food. Mr. Nath pays cash and tips well. Okay, so Mr. Nath pays the bill, and he gives the tips also to Ramesh, who brings the food. Ramesh told me something very strange, Maya. So now Nishad is making another point that Ramesh has told a very strange thing, Maya. 7 added, almost every Sunday he carries 2 lunches to Mr. Nath's room. So earlier for 2 people I said, but it was wrong. Ramesh said to 7 that he brings food for twice. Okay, one for the afternoon and one for the evening. Sorry, one for the morning and one for the afternoon. Okay, but on Sunday he carries 2 lunches for Mr. Nath's room, and the same man is with him each time. So one man is there with him every time. He's tall, fair, stout. Stout means very heavily built, very muscular, and wears spectacles. Okay, stout. He is very tall, fair, stout, wears spectacles. Ramesh says his visitor talks a lot, unlike Mr. Nath, who hardly speaks. Okay, so the one who is visiting him is a very talkative man, but Mr. Nath is always very quiet. Well done, Nishad, I told him. Now that we have made some progress with our inquiries, we'll have to sort out all the facts like expert detectives so that we can trap the crook. Okay, so now Maya was praising Nishad that well done, Mr. Detective. You have made a very good progress we have made some progress with our inquiries. Now we will have to sort out all the facts like expert detectives. Now we have some proofs, we have some facts. Now we will have to sort them out. We will have to go after them like expert detectives. Okay, so that we can trap this crook. Okay, now what happens? Okay, how you do go on Maya 7 side? How can you possibly imagine he is a crook? So now 7 is again making an argument. He has gathered every fact. He has been to his house, Mr. Nath's house, but he is not still convinced that Mr. Nath is a crook. He is a criminal. Okay, so how can you possibly imagine he's a crook? He looks so ordinary. He looks so simple. Criminals can look quite ordinary, smarty. So Maya made her point that criminals can look very simple, very ordinary, smarty. I retorted. I retorted means to reply back. Okay. Did you see the picture of the Hyderabadi housebreaker in the papers yesterday? So one news was there in the newspapers yesterday, which had the previous day, which had the picture of the Hyderabadi housebreaker. Housebreaker means someone who breaks into your house and steal your things. So have you seen him? He looked like any man on the street. Nishad looked doubtful. Okay, so Maya told the argument that a criminal can look very ordinary, very simple, like any man on the street. The monsoons broke the next day. Okay, it was monsoon season. From the next day, dark clouds accompanied by blinding flashes of lightning and rolling and roaring rolls of thunder burst with all their fury. So it was the season of monsoon. Heavy raining was there, thunder was there, flooding the streets with a heavy downpour. Downpour means heavy rainfall, and the streets were filled with water. School was to have reopened after the summer holidays, but no traffic could move. So it was the summer break of the kids, but because of the weather condition, was uh, school was not able to reopen, and they had an unexpected holiday. Okay, so this happened when they were about to go to school back, but the next day they had their holiday because of the weather condition. I thought I would spend the time usefully. So Maya is saying to us that I made my mind that I will utilize my time. I sat at my desk in our bedroom with a sheet of paper before me. Okay, so now the part 1 is over. What happened when the kids were about to go to school the next day of their summer vacations? There was a heavy rainfall and the monsoons broke out, so the weather condition was not was not apt for the school to be reopened. It was very cloudy, very rainy, and very thunderous atmosphere, thunderous weather. So the kids had an unexpected holiday in the school, so they were at home, and Maya decided to work on the case, and she got herself a sheet of paper, and she start writing the facts that they have got as evidences. So we will meet again in the next part and see what Maya could have got out from the evidences. Okay, so part 1 is over here. We will see that whether Mr. Nath was a crook or not, and whether the kids get any success in finding about the mystery of Mr. Nath.